So we now know what came and what became of Baker Mayfield. But what about the legend of someone who was the replacement of Baker Mayfield? You see, as this thing is unfolding, there was a young kid named Deshaun Watson who was a darling in the NFL. They will tell you today that Deshaun Watson was the villain. He was a quote unquote alleged criminal and one of the most unliked people in Cleveland sports history. But wouldn't you like to know that prior to that, going back to college in Clemson, his coach called him the Michael Jordan of college football. Yes, the dude that slayed Nick Saban in the Alabama Crimson Tide by himself, seemingly. Deshaun Watson came out national champ. His name was being mentioned always as the number one quarterback. It goes to the Houston Texans. The Browns passed on him one time. Goes to the Houston Texans. And by the way, was known at one point in time as the second best quarterback in the league. Well documented, 4,000 yards. Nobody had nothing on Deshaun Watson. There's no whispers. There was no anything. And then all of a sudden, magically sits out of here. We later go on to see he unfolds in the Cleveland Browns after Baker Mayfield. After Baker Mayfield figures out, you know what we need to do? We got a roster ready to win today. Nick Chubb prime. We still got Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett. We need to go out there and find us a franchise quarterback to take this Super Bowl caliber team and put it over the top. And when they went out and made the move for Deshaun Watson, everybody will tell you right now it's the worst trade in history. But at the time, Deshaun Watson was universally accepted as an upgrade over Baker Mayfield. Deshaun Watson, not only did the Cleveland Browns go after him, the New Orleans Saints went after him. The Miami Dolphins went after him. The Carolina Panthers went after him. The Atlanta Falcons went after him. Multiple teams went after Deshaun Watson. And he was universally known, if not a top 3 quarterback, at the lowest top 5 quarterback. When he turned down the Browns, people were upset. But Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski and Jimmy Haslam said, pull out the checkbook. They eventually got Deshaun Watson, and we know the history. Allegation after allegation comes out. Deshaun Watson has gone from a person who is known as an individual who was squeaky clean, no whispers of anything, is now known to many as a predator, allegedly. Many people swore that they would never watch the Cleveland Browns again. So in one moment, in one instant, you go from being an individual who was loved and beloved to an individual who was, to some, lower than the lowest. On top of that, you come after a cult classic in Baker Mayfield. So not only are you known as somebody who has a shady history and a shady past, you are now known as the guy who replaced the guy who people thought was the savior in Cleveland, who has now been banished to other parts in realms. Coincide with the rise of Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, and Deshaun Watson's name went through the earth's crust. It couldn't get any lower. But remember, it's all about the divine timing, right? And that time, Deshaun Watson, and he received his timing early in his career. He received success in college, success early with the Houston Texans, and he came in and got the biggest contract in the history of the game, guaranteed. That later on, would become an albatross around his neck as well, because he was known as the person who got the guaranteed contract that never lived up to it. Subsequently, he got injured one season, suspended another for 11 games, and then finally tore his Achilles heel last year. You look at the timetable and you look at the circumstances. And Deshaun Watson now has switched places with Baker Mayfield. As a matter of fact, Deshaun Watson is in a place that even he didn't even have to go that you have right now with Shedeur Sanders. Because he was always beloved, always liked. Nobody had a bad thing to say about him, and then allegations came. The reality of the situation is this. Right now, there is no lower place to go from Deshaun Watson. But always remember this. Timing is a thing. See, he had his success early, but now we will truly get to see what you are made of. Since taking a fall, Deshaun Watson has been rehabbing his leg, rehabbing his image. He's turned his life over to God. He has become a married man. And now he is focused on salvaging his career. I always talk about timing because he has all the money in the world. That's not going nowhere. But the true make of a person isn't where you start or where you're at, but it's how you finish. He has the opportunity to do what we all have an opportunity to do. Put your next foot in the step and the next step, and make your next move your best move. Make your best step your next step. And so when people say that Deshaun Watson will never play here and never play here, that's not our decision. Remember what I told you. It's not my timing. It's not your timing. It's his timing. And sometimes you coincide and you're at a place for a reason. And I think it's ironic that you got two young people coming and passing through on the road. And one who's been there and done that, made his money, has an opportunity to tell him what were my mistakes and how you don't get into them. And sometimes that can invigorate you. Sometimes that can really pay dividends. So trust and believe. Deshaun Watson is telling a young Shedeur Sanders, hey, I see how that play out. I done been there. And I done been there when I've been on that football field and people was cheering when I tore that Achilles heel. How did I use that for motivation and what makes me want to go on? Those are all things we think about. But the thing about the Deshaun Watson trade is we go back and do revisionist history is this. Understand, they say it's the worst trade in history today, but it wasn't universally seen as that then. It's funny how history happens. Sometimes you just need to remind people of it. And if you can remind people of their history, right, you can actually tell them some of the things that could be in store in the future. Once upon a time, there was a guy named Baker Mayfield, and they left him for dead. Turns out he wasn't so dead. I don't think the same thing should be used on Deshaun Watson. People say that he's dead and gone. He'll never play in the league. But there's one thing that I've learned in the last couple of years between Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and some of these old guys. Don't put dirt on the graves yet. It's a funny thing about timing, because when it is in the time and it is in the cards, ain't nobody do nothing to stop it.